Hello, everyone. Welcome to the first official Deck Tech breakdown here on the channel. Today, I'm sitting down with a familiar voice, Izarzin, from Big Beard Pirates TCG, to talk through his build of SAO GGO Sinon for Union Arena. We'll be breaking down the deck's identity, its key mechanics, core gameplay, game plan, and how it adapts across different matchups. Whether you're new to SAO or trying to master the Sinon build, this is the place to start. So let's start by talking about the overall identity of the deck. How would you classify this deck in terms of its playstyle? Defensive, rush, aggressive, or combo?
Yeah, I would classify this deck as mainly defensive, because you're trying to be able to clear bodies and such. So, yeah, very much defensive, and then going for life after you've have a stronger board advantage.
Do you think it takes on different roles depending on the matchup? If so, can you walk us through that?
Yes, it does take different roles, especially depending on what archetype you're playing against, and specific matchups like Green Saitama. You do want to end up going for more of a rush gameplay in the earlier turns, and then eventually ramp up into your higher cost characters. And then, for example, if you're playing against, let's say, maybe Red Ashford or Speed of Sound Sonic, you're trying to do a more defensive play style where you're more, wagering your BP levels, like, maybe you're placing out early, like turn 1, turn 2, 2500 in the front, just so they won't get in that early chip damage.
And when you sit down at a table with this deck, what is the role you expect to play in most of your games?
I'd say the role I expect to play in most games is more of a reactionary role. I'm looking to see what they're going to do, and then knowing my matchup knowledge, I'll be able to, efficiently break down their board, so I'm able to, take their life, and at the same time, always make sure that they have us, like, no 4Ks or anything, always take out their high priority targets.
Right. So we've got your deck laid out from left to right, starting from zero costs all the way to the bigger finishers in the deck. Let's talk about the overall goal first. What would you say is the main goal or end game of this deck? Is there a specific SR, raid, or combo the whole list is trying to build towards?
Yeah, I believe the main combo is to be able to get any sort of Sinon on board in the front line with Snipe, either using the special, which is Ultimate Ratio Hecate 2, or using the raid Sinon, the 6 cost, that also gains Snipe when played. And using that leverage, you go into the 7 cost Kirito, which has damage 2 whenever you win a battle on the board. So you're kind of making up for the fact that maybe your 6 cost Sinon doesn't have impact, so it doesn't get the damage through. So you're getting that damage 2 from the Kirito instead.
Okay, so you just pointed out which cards are key to achieving that goal, and can you explain a little bit more as to why? Why are these the two key cards in this deck compared to anything else in the deck?
Specifically, for our raid targets, where we're at a point where we're trying to have basically a bigger board than them, in the sense that, okay, if they have 3k BP on their board, I want to have 3k and above. So you're able to spread out a lot of, plus 1000 to your other characters to make a more even playing field, and to also have the chance to, take out anything that's, 4k or 5k, depending on the situation with the snipes. So the fact that we just get like these buffs, like the 1k buff activate main from the 7 cost Kirito, and then the 6 cost Sinon, whenever it wins a battle, it also gives plus 1000 to something else. That's mainly how you're trying to leverage your board state.
So, as we go down the line from your zero cost to your higher cost cards, can you break down the general role of each section in helping you reach that end game, reach your Kiritos and reach your Sinons? How are you looking to play these cards, and when are you trying to gain benefits from them that they may have? Start from your zeros and work your way on up.
Yeah, absolutely. For my zero specifically, I run 13 in this build. I feel that this is a good number because I have a Yuki here, which is able to draw and trash. So I'm not in a as bad of a situation if I'm sitting at 12, or I don't have to sit at 14 because I do have also my one cost, which kind of leverage out. So we have the Yuki there, and then we also have our Ray target. So we have the Kirito, and then we have the Sinon. I have the Sinon at 3 because one of the few searches that we have, which is from our 3-cost Kirito, only searches for GGO other than Kirito. So I'm able to lower it down by 1 and still be able to have enough Sinons to be able to raid over. And then we have 2 of Musketeer X, mainly for buffing, and it does have a good trigger, which is an active trigger. So as for buffing specifically, you're looking at maybe your 4-cost Kirito, which when attacking, if it's 5k or more BP, you draw a card. You have your Sinon color trigger, which is when it's 4k or more, it gains impact 1, certain things like that. And then I do have the 1 cost. I only have 2 of the 1 costs. So basically I have 0 and 1 cost, the ratio of 15. That's usually kind of where I want to stay at. From like 15 to 16 is a good spot.
Now, why'd you choose that Sinon as the 1 cost?
Mainly because I personally do not like playing the bounce cards. Like in this specific deck, there's a Yamakaze. That's the other 1 cost option. Mainly because I'm not looking to necessarily go immediately into like end game with this deck. I'm mainly, like I said, reacting. So I'm not, on the back foot in the early game just because I'm trying to get to 7 costs. Okay. So that I think that's the reason why I'm also playing Sinon, is that it is a raid target, and also it has nullify impact, which is good for certain matchups. And I think one of the best parts of this card is that it's 2,500. Yes. So say you're in a situation where you're going second, which is personally, in my opinion, you do want to go second in this deck. Okay. There are very aggressive decks like Ashford and Sonic that will push out, going first. With usually it'll be like a 2k body. So having a 2,500 that's able to effectively block is a good situation.
Fantastic. All right, moving on. You have no more 1 cost. What about your 2s?
Yeah, so for my 2s, I do have 5 2s. I used to have 6, but I ended up noticing like the Sinon. So this one specifically, it's a 2 cost 2,500. And then if this character is active, it gains +1 energy generation. So it generates 2. It lets us get into, our 6 cost and 7 cost early. Mm. But there are certain situations in late game where, it coming in rested is a detriment to getting to your 7 cost. It does also have the added benefit of activating a certain other card, which is the 4-cost Yuki, which when attacking, if there's a Sinon, Asuna, or a Sleeping Knights, you're able to draw and then place 1 card from your hand into your sideline, which is good filtering.
And so the Sinon has synergy with that card. Yes. Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I didn't realize that before. And what about your other 2-drop?
Yeah, so my other 2-drop is a 2-cost Sinon. This is one of the searchable cards in this deck, which is for, GGO. And it does have step. And then when played, I can look at the top card of my deck and I can put it at the top or bottom, which is, pretty decent filtering. And it also has that added, that good stat line of 3k. We do get a lot of +1k BP buffs in this deck. So being at 3k is a solid medium when you're trying to get into the late game.
So you can activate your Kirito, make that another 4k threat, and a lot of decks are not getting over that 4k threshold outside of these big green decks. Nice.
Yeah.
All right. So moving along, we're at your 3 costs.
Yeah, so in terms of my 3 costs, for my characters, I do have the color trigger, the 4 of, so it's the Sinon, and like how I reiterated earlier, it does, when it's 4k or more BP, it does gain impact 1, which is good, and then it also generates 2 energy.
And I am personally of the opinion this is one of the best cards in the entire deck.
Yeah, I would completely agree with that. It's probably has the most synergy with the Kirito 7 cost. Being able to pump up very easily. And then, in addition to the fact that you can use it with special and give it snipe, and so you're able to snipe something, draw a card, and you're able to get it 1 life in because it's above 4K.
Now, you have one other event card in your deck that's a flavorful one of that I think deserves a little shout out when it comes to that Sinon being talked about.
Yeah. So, earlier in the video, I did say that it was a defensive deck, but it also has some combo aspects. So, specifically with this Photon Sword, if either with the 6-cost Sinon Raid who doesn't have impact, or with the color trigger, as we stated, that gains impact when it's 4,000 or more. This gives plus 2,000. If there's a Kirito, it gives impact plus 1. So if you add this card and then you also leverage it with the special, which gives snipe to this Sinon, you're basically sniping something and then getting impact 2. So you're getting 2 life. So yeah, very, very strong and threatening, especially in the late game.
Yeah, it's a combo you have to be aware of when you're playing the deck and playing against it. Now, moving along on to your next 3 costs.
So my next 3 costs, it would be the Kirito. So this Kirito, it's one of the only searchers in this deck. It searches the top 4 of your deck, and it searches for GGO other than Kirito, which very unfortunate that they had to add that that small wording, but it kind of makes sense looking at how the strength of this deck is already pretty, up there, even with this kind of, detrimental search. But yeah, so it's obviously a raid target, and you also have your active trigger. You're always going to have bodies up front. So, that active trigger is actually very useful in this kind of deck. And like I said, it's 3K. So, that's a very good stat line. If you're not at 4K, then 3K is the second best.
Alrighty. And moving along, you have a couple of one-ofs. Fun-ofs.
Yeah, I do have a couple of one-ofs. I think this is very much just being able to play test. You do kind of get a feel for, certain breaking points and, knowing this Sinon, let's say specifically for this Beagle that I play as a one-of. The reason why I play this is because, like I said before, the Sinon sometimes in the late game becomes a detriment when I'm needing a 2 energy generator and it comes in rested. So I added in this Spiegel because there's a few reasons, right? First off, it's GGO, so it can be searched through the Kirito. Then second off, in terms of, our meta, there is a lot of blue and yellow cards, which this card benefits from. So, if there's a yellow or blue card on my opponent's field, I reduce this card's required energy by 1 while in my hand. So it would be 2, like the Sinon.
Yes.
So, yeah. So there is that added benefit. And it's basically kind of like an insight to the meta, knowing that, hey, people are going to play blue SAO, people are going to play blue JJK, and coming up, we're getting Bleach Volume 2 and Blue Bleach, is getting to become like a very strong contender just from looking at the cards and everything.
Oh yeah. So I think all of those cards that are cheaper against blue have a lot of value in the coming formats.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. And then yeah, I do.
Yep. Go on.
Yeah, absolutely. So I do have another one of which, for 3 costs, it's Buggy. Funnily enough, from play testing, I even thought about putting it up to 2, but it seems like, I don't know, maybe specifically in my hands, finding the one of is just, very much possible.
Yeah, you always do, don't you?
Yeah. Seems to be a recurring theme in most of my games. Yeah. Basically, it's it's a field, and activate main. I can place 1 card from my hand into the sideline, and then it generates plus 2 energy generation until the end of the turn, so it would go to 3. So there's a few main reasons why you want to have this card. Like I said before, in terms of one of the strongest cards in your deck, it is this 3-cost Sinon with the 7-cost Kirito. So being able to get into a turn where you have both on the field at the same time, it requires a lot of energy, right? Because this is usually your 2 energy generator in the back, and you're usually not moving it up. So you're ending up having to raid into this Kirito and not have this in the front to, maybe get that double whammy of the, the 2 impacts. So what this Buggy enables is you're able to push up this Sinon and, you only really need one more 2 energy generator and then 2 other bodies in the back to be able to get to 7, which allows you, to raid onto your Kirito. So yeah, that's one of the reasons. And the other is, an end game. The boards are wiped out. Both of y'all have 1 life, and you're basically going into a slugfest. Maybe you just want to push all 3 other characters up, and then to still be able to, get a good turnout, you're still able to, trash a card and then still play out like, 3 costs with this.
Yes, and big green decks are known for their late game advantages. And I think this Buggy, especially with the get trigger, is a fantastic advantage for this deck. Now, the last things for us to talk about is those 4 drops we kind of scratched on a little bit. Kirito, that, yeah, it's fantastic synergy within the deck. And then, of course, Yuki. Can you explain the Yuki, though, for anybody who might be questioning why you're playing an ALO card inside of a GGO deck?
Yeah, absolutely. So with my kind of game philosophy for Union Arena, I think that you at least need to have about 40 triggers or even more than that. So at least 40. And this card, has an active trigger, which is really nice. That's one of its benefits. And the other is the fact that it's a 4K. And it has a keyword, Nullify Impact, which, nowadays, even in the early days of Union Arena, we realize, Impact is a very strong keyword. So being able to mitigate that keyword is very good. And like I said before, the Sinon does enable this card to be able to draw a card and then place 1 card into the sideline. So you'll be able to get that filter going through. So yeah, it's very much, I would say this is very much like an overloaded card for being able to play it for 4.
Oh yeah. The card just does way too much for its stats.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, that covers up us discussing the basics of the deck. Oh, wait. Yeah, all of that is the more in-depth stuff. It's all right. They have an editor who can edit out stuff like this. What kind of decks or play styles does Sinon GGO tend to perform well into?
I think the types of decks that it performs well into are decks that have certain raid cards or certain, boss characters that generate a lot of value from activate main effects. Being able to take out certain things like, specifically, let's say, Esper Sisters, they want to keep generating their value from their raid cards, specifically with, the Terrible Tornado and the Hellish Blizzard. And they have those activate main effects that is able to manipulate, the amount of AP they can have using, certain events like, Hero, which is the AP restand, which every deck has. Or being able to tap down certain things, which in this deck specifically, we have the 7-cost Kirito, which does give them a disadvantage where, during their opponent's turn, you have to basically place 1 extra card from their hand into the sideline if they want to affect this card with any type of event.
Oh, that card is so pushed. So pushed.
Yeah.
Kirito has too many lines of text.
Yeah, it's a very big, bulky line of text right there.
Now, what matchups give you the most trouble when you're piloting GGO? And what are some tools you have to manage those types of matchups?
Yeah, I would say that the matchups that are, the worst for this is possibly, Green Saitama, or basically any deck that is pushing above 4K. Because obviously, one of the aggressive factors I have in this deck is a Kirito, but I can't search it, right? So when I'm in a situation where I don't have any Kiritos, I'm basically just looking to have a superior board state by being able to snipe with my, 6-cost Sinon, or maybe using the special, which gives, plus 2,500 and snipe to a Sinon. So if they're sitting at like 4,500 or 5K, maybe sometimes I won't have any BP buffs from anything else, so I'm kind of sitting in an awkward situation. So yeah, Green Saitama has Silver Fang, which is 4,500. You have a high priority target in King, which is 5K. You want to get that out of the board as fast as possible. And then say for Lancelot, they do have their their 8-cost Lancelot, which, clears a body, and then damage 2, impact 1, very strong stat line.
Yes. Now, when you're making tweaks between events, what type of changes do you think you're going to be making to this deck based on the meta itself?
Yeah, I think the main tweaks are the tech cards that you're seeing here, like the 1-ofs. Like Photon Sword, like I said, it's mainly for that matchup where you're in a situation where you're not at above 4K. Like say for Green Saitama, this card is very useful to play against, versus the Silver Fang or versus the King, to be able to remove it with the 6-cost Sinon. And even just like increasing your tech cards. So if we're in a meta where there's a lot of rush, maybe I want to increase this Buggy because I'm in a situation where maybe I need to push out more bodies and not worry so much about my hand size. Just worry about, what I have up front. So be able to, not get chip damage on me.
Hey, yes, and I think that is everything. Thanks for helping me get the first deck tech on this channel up and going. Big thank you, Izarzin, from Big Beard Pirates TCG, for breaking down the ins and outs of SAO GGO. If you enjoyed this breakdown, be sure to check out more guides here at Experience Rick, and for more in-depth knowledge of the deck, check out my channel, ProDMJoey. Drop your questions or your own experiences with Sinon GGO in the comments. We'd love to hear how others are building and adapting this deck. And of course, don't forget to like, subscribe here, and check out Big Beard Pirates TCG for even more Union Arena content.